Although it is too early to say my predictions on the predicted, I might turn up my volume a little bit. Okay. Ooh, that might be a little loud. All right. Although it is too early to say my predictions on the 53-man roster with the 10 players to the practice squad for the Minnesota Vikings, we can see how some of these players are going to look and what is going to happen. The Minnesota Vikings went off with wide receivers. These last few years, Minnesota Vikings have been using so many late picks on wide receivers, and this year they took a wide receiver in free agency, Tajay Sharp, who is going to probably be about their 3 receiver, Justin Jefferson, who's probably going to be their 2 receiver. They made big moves on wide receivers, and then aside from that, KJ Osborne, I think 5th round pick, Courtney Davis, I think he was a free agent, and then Dan Chesina, I think he was. Which one was from the I can't remember. They got a player from the Canada League too. Maybe that was Dan Chesina. Don't really know who that guy is, I'm going to be honest. But I'm going to be saying say goodbye to these Minnesota Vikings. These Minnesota Vikings that we have seen play already, or maybe we just seen them play in the garbage time, or maybe in what's it called, the preseason. We've seen these players play, and I'm going to just say goodbye to these Vikings. These Vikings should not be on the team, or most of them should not even be in the NFL. And those are players that I'm going to be talking about right now, starting with Jake Browning. Jake Browning came out in preseason last year and looked great. He got the starting role over Kyle Sloter, which was really weird because Kyle Sloter even looked better than him. But Jake Browning is a player who was our 2019 undrafted free agent, and he looked great then, but he looked awful against the Bears. Jake Browning is garbage. He is awful. You have to get him out of here, especially when you draft Nate Stanley in the 7th round. Nate Stanley in the 7th round by the Minnesota Vikings, I think, was a great draft pick. He was a 3-year starter out of Iowa State and is going to take Jake Browning role 100%, I think. And I think he should even take Sean Mannion's role, but this year he is not going to. He's probably going to be in the practice squad, and then if Sean Mannion and Kirk Cousins gets injured, maybe he'll come out. That's not going to happen, though. I would like to see him take Sean Mannion's job. I have never been a fan of this guy, but we'll see what's happening. So I'm just say goodbye to Jake Browning. He was on the practice squad, moved to the active roster, I think around week 12 or something like that. He was moved to the active roster to play with the Vikings in garbage time. Looked awful. He's gone. He got to get out of here. Say goodbye to this player, and then also say goodbye to these 4 wide receivers. So I just talked about wide receivers the Vikings brought in: Tajay Sharp, Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, Courtney Davis, and Dan Chesina. I talked about 5 wide receivers the Vikings have just brought in, and with Tajay Sharp, Justin Jefferson, and KJ Osborne, I think being on the active roster for the Minnesota Vikings, I'm actually certain these players are going to be in the active roster for the Vikings. And then Courtney Davis and Dan Chesina, don't really know what's going to happen with them. Maybe they make the team, maybe they go to practice squad. I don't know. But there's 4 receivers I picked out that the Vikings are going to get rid of, and these are players that you got to say goodbye to, starting with Dylan Mitchell, our 7th round pick in 2019. Vikings took a lot of late wide receivers in 2019 in the draft and in free agency, with one of those players being Dylan Mitchell, who looked terrible. I do not think this guy is going to be in the NFL at all. I think he's going to be cut by the Vikings, and no team is going to pick him up. I think he will go to some teams to practice for them, but I don't think they're going to sign him. And then after that, we got Davion Davis, who was also with the 2019 wide receivers. Undrafted free agent in 2019. I think he's got to go too. I don't think he's going to be playing with any other team. So that would be Dylan Mitchell and Davion Davis. I think are going to get cut by the Vikings and not going to be playing for any more teams. As for these next 2 wide receivers, I think they will be playing for other teams, with that being Alexander Hollins, another player from 2019. Alexander Hollins was an undrafted free agent and outperformed a lot of the 2019 wide receivers besides BC Johnson, but he outperformed all of them. And I think Alexander Hollins is going to be picked up by a team, maybe going with his friend Stephon Diggs. I mean, Alexander Hollins and Stephon Diggs were good friends with the Minnesota Vikings, and I think I don't know if the Bills are looking for any wide receivers right now, but taking Alexander Hollins and having him on your practice squad is a great player. I think Alexander Hollins, great route runner. I saw his route runs great. He can work on the hands, but his footwork is amazing, and his routes look great. He's a very built receiver too, for the receiver position. He's tall and stuff. So I think Alexander Hollins, he was our undrafted free agent. I think he's a great player to have on your active roster and step into have on your practice squad and then step onto the active roster eventually when he develops and when he can improve his hands, because that's a part you can improve on your agility, I guess. So Alexander Hollins, I do think, is going to be playing in the NFL next season. I think he will be playing for another team, though. I don't think the Minnesota Vikings can keep him, and I don't think they will keep him, especially because they're kind of bringing in all these wide receivers, and then they'll probably get rid of a lot of their other ones. And then after that, we have Chad Beebe. So Chad Beebe is a player that the Vikings used quite a bit. He was our 2018 undrafted free agent and played pretty well. I mean, I don't think Chad Beebe is going to get picked up by any team. I think the Vikings are going to be forced to cut him, though, because we do have a ton of wide receivers. Like I said, bringing in 5 wide receivers. Now, I don't think all 5 of them are going to stay on the roster, but like I said, Tajay Sharp, Justin Jefferson, and KJ Osborne, I think are going to be staying on the active roster. And then I think Chad Beebe is going to get cut, though. Chad Beebe was a player who was used quite a bit in special teams, got injured. With injury concerns like that, you don't want to have him on your practice squad because that's when you use your players on the practice squad. So that's why I do think Chad Beebe is going to get injured, and I think is going to get cut, and I think he is going to get picked up back by the Minnesota Vikings. They're going to get rid of Chad Beebe just to cut down to the 53-man roster and the 10 people on the practice squad. But after this thing goes on, I think they're going to bring Chad Beebe back just because I think they liked him on special teams, and I think they liked his character and stuff like that, and that's what the Minnesota Vikings are going to be looking at, and that's why they're going to bring him back. And I think that's what we're going to see with them. So I would say goodbye to these players. Jake Browning, gone. Dylan Mitchell, gone. Davion Davis, gone. Alexander Hollins could stay. I think Alexander Hollins is a great player, and I think he will play in the NFL next season, just not for the Minnesota Vikings. Chad Beebe, gone, but he will come back. That is my predictions, and those 5 players you should be saying goodbye to on the Minnesota Vikings offense this year. Even though it's too early to predict, I feel like these are players that I'm almost certain are going to be gone by now, just the way they've drafted and the way they've handled this free agency market. So say goodbye to those players.